Hey guys, it's Evan with Evan K Exotic. It's early June 2025 and today's a spotlight on my California Kingsnakes that I've got. And so you guys probably know that I'm mainly a boa person, but I do have some colubrids, including these wonderful California Kingsnakes. And so this is a spotlight more than a comprehensive care guide because these are one of the more commonly kept species and they're well documented on the internet. And I just think that they're generally people that are better experts on the area to talk definitively, but their care is generally pretty straightforward and standard California or king snake care, which means that they are a temperate animal, meaning that they can handle cooler nights. They do need a heat source up into the upper 80s, low 90 in the summer, but as a general rule, they can do well in the ambient conditions of whatever your room is, as long as they have heat. Humidity is not too big of a concern for them in terms of too dry. Generally, I will tell you that if you're going to run into a problem with a colubrid, it's too wet, meaning they don't want to sit on wet coconut. I keep them on dry aspen and I provide them humid hide boxes. And they do like to use those humid boxes both during shed, sometimes just because they need the humidity, and then during egg laying they do as well. So one thing I'm going to tell you guys is I'm going to pull out a female that is has eggs, and then I'm going to show you some eggs that are on the ground and try to candle them for you and check for veins and whatnot. So stick around and you'll see all of that. But other than that, these are a great species. And actually, I read up about these for this video because I don't know too much about the history and the morphs and whatnot. And one thing that's pretty surprising to me is that there aren't actually a ton of morphs in these. And it's more that all the looks have been line bred and cultivated over time. These are one of the more long-term work with animals. And so this is what they call a California king snake. And back in the day, it was more common to delineate these as like a desert king snake or a desert California king snake, referring to the bandids. And then there's also something called a coastal king snake that has a much more cryptic reticulated pattern, less obviously banded, but they're the same species is my understanding. And then there's all these other different looks, and except for a few that might be true morphs, I think a lot of that was just line breeding, like high whites, bandings, stripings, all that type of stuff. So this is my male. He is about 4 feet long, and this is actually a pretty big California king snake as they come. Both of my adults are fairly big. I think the average size range is about 3 to 4. And you can get some big 5-foot specimens out there, but as a general rule, the 3 to 4, he's right at 4. This is a bigger animal. My female's slightly bigger than him because she's full of eggs, but they are about the same size. So anyways, other than that, other things to tell you about. They are considered black and white, and that is generally considered a higher quality specimen. But the truth of the matter is, and I don't know if you can see it, all the animals are not truly black. They're this dark chocolate like Hershey brown. And I actually think that some of them have bred to be like more of a chocolate color, and that's attractive. But then there's also some that have been bred to be very black and white. So this one's in the chocolate brown scheme, and then I have the females more truly dark black and white looking. But even her, if you shine a bright light on her, it's going to be a dark brown. That's actually something I read. I always thought these were black and white, but if you, one of the things I read is that there is no true black pigments in them per se, or that's very, very unusual for them to be truly black. And what you're usually seeing is just the more black contrasted specimens are more truly brown. Other than that, they have a very different feel than boas and whatnot. They're a hard, dry scale. They have slight keeling on them. I'm watching to make sure it doesn't bite my tricep here because they like to do that. But here at the tails, they tend to be even a little more keeled. Ooh, you're gonna get me in the soft spot. My high Heidi's, don't bite me there. If you hear me talking about the biting factor of these, one thing about king snakes is they're just a little food snarfly, and they're good beginner snakes as long as you can accept that they're food snarfly. And that's why I started to stop playing with him with the hook, just trying to get him out of that. And something I've noticed about these snakes and their food bitingness is two things. One, it's seasonal, meaning that these snakes are both seasonal feeders as well as seasonal biters. Meaning in the warm season, in the spring, they seem to have a big dervish of feeding motivation, and through the summer they have a big dervish. But then it's not uncommon for them to just turn off like a light switch and stop feeding at some point. And then they won't feed and they'll get real soft, and then again they'll perk up in the spring again. So that's just something to know about them, and that's one of the reasons I'm extra heightened concern right now about getting nibbled on is because it's the summertime. But that's just a factor with them. They are still very good snakes. Their bites are inconsequential, but if you own a king snake, you're very likely to take a food bite from them. It's just a feature of them. Beyond that, I do brumate these in the winter. And the way I do it is I feed them for the last time in November or December, hold them for 2 weeks so that they have a full gut purge. I've unplugged their heat in the snake room for a day to get them down to the ambient temperature of the snake room. I put them in boxes. I move them into the rest, the cooler part of the house for a day to get them down to the cooler, and then I move them into the basement, where the basement's about 55 degrees. When they're in the basement, I keep them with clean, dry substrate. I give them water all the time, but I contain the water inside of a little plastic box. So I put the bowl inside of a box that they'd have to go into to get that water, and that's just so there's not too much humidity and things in there that becomes problems. Hopefully they don't tip the bowl and create an RI or something. So contain your water if you're going to offer it, or just offer it for a day or two, a week, and then pull it out and make sure that they're not sitting in damp, cold conditions. The one thing I'll tell you about brumation in general is do it or don't do it. Meaning that when you are going to cool an animal, feed your animal, keep it at the normal temperatures for about 10 to 14 days till it's gut purged. Then quickly, over the course of 1 or 2 days, drop it down to that cold temperature. You can even probably do it overnight. And then when you're going to warm them up, quickly bring them back up to normal temperatures and start feeding them again. And the reason to do that is because if you think about it like food, like food safety, there's a danger zone of temperatures, meaning that it's too warm to be cold and it's too hot or too cold to be hot. And that's the danger zone for bacteria to grow in food. And it's similar with brumating reptiles, meaning that if they are warm enough for bacteria to grow, but not warm enough that their immune system's fully up and functioning so that they can fight it, that's a danger zone. So you either want to bring them quickly down to the cool zone to limit the amount of bacteria that will grow, or you want to bring them quickly out of that so that they're into the warm area where their immune systems will start firing again, and they will be able to fend those off through their own immune system due to the temperatures. But other than that, their cagings are pretty simple. I plan on like a 3x2. Woo, you're gonna bite me right there, I know. A 3x2, I keep them in these big tubs. Point I'll make is I keep them on the same thermostat as my boas, and I just manage the microenvironment. Here's a little joke about California Kingsnakes. This is their favorite box. Just like me, I'm in California. We love our tacos, but I fill their cages full of like cardboard and things. And my friend who doesn't like California, he goes, it's a very realistic, natural for their environment, full of trash. But they like also to cover like that. And here I'm gonna pull out the female, and she is in shed. And that's because she is building follicles again and going to have another clutch of eggs. So let me adjust this. I'm not going to pull her out because I don't want to disturb her too much, but turn this around. Actually, I don't think I want to do that. I think I'll make it look upside down for you in the camera. But here we go. Sorry. All right. This is the female. And if you can see, she's starting to build follicles again, and she's going back into shed. And so I bred her this year. I posted some videos online. I posted some videos of the eggs. But what she's doing now is she's taking she's building follicles down here, if you can see, and she's in a pre-lay shed. And I think in about 3 or 4 more weeks, she's going to lay again. But reproduction on these and also double clutching, meaning getting a second set of eggs, is highly contingent on food, meaning that when these snakes eat, you want to feed them very, very heavily, as much as they will. When they lay the first eggs, you want to feed them very, very heavily. Over the course of about 2 weeks, I got about 14 mice into her after her first clutch, basically 1 mouse per egg. And that kicked her off into the double clutching again. And now I'm still feeding her through, and lots of food to keep her up and to weight. And I'm going to just feed as much as I can. She's going to lay eggs. I'm going to feed through the end of the summer, and then she'll probably turn off feeding again at some point, and then I will and then she won't eat again until the spring again. So if you're going to breed the animals, and if you want to double clutch, it's contingent on food input, and it is also something where you have a window where they will feed, and so you need to maximize that. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to feed her again later today. She will eat readily, even in shed like this. So I don't want to disturb her too much, but I think that in about another 3 or 4 weeks, I'm going to get some more eggs out of her and have a second clutch. And now the last thing I'm going to do is turn off some lights and try to candle some king snake eggs for you. Let's see. Hopefully it's dark enough in this room for it. There we go. All right, and to candle eggs, you just need a small, powerful light, so something that's focused. I'm using an autoscope, but it's overkill. You could use a small flashlight. You don't even need to buy, they make little candling flashlights, but you don't need to buy those. You could, even like a little pen light in the hardware store would work. All right, so we're gonna check for veins. These were laid just under a month ago, and they have about a month to go before they hatch. So let me turn off this light, see what I can get for you. So just, I don't know, do you see the vein structure on these? Hopefully you can see that. And they've got about a month ago, and the veins definitely seem like they're growing. And I actually don't know if this is normal. I've never actually bred king snakes before, but I am seeing vein growth, but I don't know if this is normal or not. So if you know, go ahead and tell me. This is about a month into incubation at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. This is what I'm seeing. It's definitely progressing more veining. I just don't know if this is normal. The one thing that I found kind of curious about these eggs compared to python eggs is they're a little bit harder and tougher. They're more like, they're on the way to more like a bird egg, like a hard egg, whereas the python eggs seem always very leathery. They're very more like skin-like. These are not like a chicken egg, but they're more on that realm to like a hard egg. So I was a little surprised by that, slash a little like maybe that was a little less than desirable. So let me know also if you have king snake experience, if you think that these should be a little bit harder than a python egg or not. I just don't know. That's something that's outside my experience level. Anyways, that's just what I'll show you about my king snakes. It's a quick little update. I should have some of these for you guys later this year. They're a good smaller species. They'll be good for a lot of people that want a hardy animal that's behaviorally interesting and gorgeous. I think they're really cool animals. So I hope that answers a bunch of questions for you. Take care. Bye-bye.